Everybody, it's a pleasure to be here. And before I start, let me acknowledge Dutch Ruppersberger, and I know that John Sarbanes was here, and all the members of the congressional delegation. And Dutch, let me say that spicy food and several Grand Marniers would not keep me up at night. It just prevent me from getting up in the morning. And so,
is that why you were late today?
Good one. I also want to acknowledge, because we're here to talk about cybersecurity, all the implications, many of them economic, but there's a larger mission here. And for all the folks that are involved in protecting this great country, thank you. And so, obviously, you've heard a lot on this topic. The President made it a priority when he said that cybersecurity was going to be a national, economic, and security issue for him. Governor O'Malley followed shortly after that announcement and said that Maryland has an opportunity to be the epicenter for cybersecurity. Now, that's a pretty bold statement, and you've heard some reasons for why we can be that. But this really comes down to a few things, and then having smart policies to follow them up. So, first off, this is about having the key institutions, and we've mentioned them, but it's a laundry list of acronyms, starting with the NSA, we're the birthplace of cybersecurity, now with Cyber Command, NIST, DISA, C4ISR, we're all here. Having some of the smartest and best educated people on the planet. Do you realize that we have a second highest concentration of engineers here, 26.1% in technical workers? Having the institutions to produce the next generations of the future. Now, Dutch mentioned the 13 centers that were certified. That's an eye-popping number. And to follow that up, we have a #1 public school system now for 3 years running. And then having that ecosystem of companies that have been here, not for years, but for decades. And frankly, we have 250,000 technology jobs tied here. Many of them to cybersecurity. It's about 10% of our workforce. That is the fourth highest concentration anywhere in the United States. The fact is, when we say we want to be the epicenter for cybersecurity, we would make the case that we already are the epicenter for cybersecurity. And the question isn't whether we're going to be it. The question is, how do we retain that lead, and how do we make sure that we articulate sound policies to move us forward? So when Governor O'Malley unveiled Cyber Maryland back in January of 2010, there were 4 key components to that plan. The first part was support the creation and growth of innovative cybersecurity technologies in Maryland. That's basically about how do we become an innovation hub. The second was develop an educational pipeline to train new cybersecurity talent and advance workforce development. This is all about smart people, and if we can't produce them, somebody else will, and the innovation will occur elsewhere. The third was advancing cybersecurity policies to position Maryland for enhanced national leadership. As a state, if we don't walk the talk, then we don't have credibility on this. So this goes to what we do as a state. And the fourth was ensure the growth and future competitiveness of our cybersecurity industry. And that hits a whole host of things, from creating the climate for where cybersecurity can be successful to marketing this great state to the rest of the world as the epicenter for cybersecurity. What are some of the things that we've done since then? First off, when it comes to thought leadership and innovation, as a state, we proposed that a new National Center of Excellence for Cybersecurity should be created. And we wanted it, obviously, in Maryland. I want to thank Senator Mikulski, who has taken a leadership role to ensure and to work on that center being developed at NIST, to transfer some of the best technologies from government into the private sector. And it's an ongoing project, but it's something that I know the Senator has been very, very supportive at every step of the way. The second thing is, even if we're thought leaders and innovators, we want to be the place where all this next generation of innovation gets commercialized. And that comes down to creating more innovative companies. and part of that is funding them. So Invest Maryland, which we passed this last legislative session, will provide $70 million at a minimum to invest directly in venture capital through the Maryland Venture Fund and through private venture funds. Now, our track record is that when we've invested venture dollars, about 60% has gone to software and often cybersecurity related companies, whether it's Oculus, whether it's Tenable, or whether it's SourceFire. We invest in this, and Invest Maryland will invest in this tomorrow. The Small Business Credit Initiative, we're getting $7 million in addition to what we're doing through Invest Maryland through the Small Business Credit Initiative to our venture fund. We got the first down payment already, and we intend to invest a lot of that into cybersecurity. Other efforts include making sure that small, innovative companies get access to contracts. So we created a whole Team Maryland network to partner some of the most young and innovative companies with established ones. We've also created a commission on cybersecurity and innovation. Under workforce, which we're going to come back to a lot because, frankly, this is about smart people. With Dollar, we've created a Pathways to Cybersecurity Careers Consortium, and we mentioned it, but they got a $5 million grant to provide a lot of the certifications that you need in cybersecurity. Often it isn't getting that next 4-year degree, it's getting certified to be able to do specific types of technologies. Through the BRAC Higher Education Fund, the Maryland Education Commission has granted nearly $1 million to support education programs and develop cybersecurity curriculum. On STEM, we partnered with Project Lead the Way, a national nonprofit, and we developed a high school STEM curriculum now being used in 14 out of 24 school systems. And our Department of Education is developing a statewide STEM curriculum to align K through 12 studies with the needs of higher education and industry. Already, we have increased the number of STEM graduates from our universities by 10%, and we have doubled the number of STEM certified teachers in our system. We get that we have to address this at every step of the way of the educational pipeline. The University of Maryland has also established a cybersecurity task force last year to basically inventory all of their curriculum to answer the question, what do we need to do to produce the pipeline that the state is going to require? And I also want to give credit to College Park for launching the Maryland Cyber Center, MC2, to bring together all cyber-related disciplines, as well as our friends up here at UMBC, that's created with Northrop Grumman, one of our first cyber incubators called the SYNC Incubator. So on workforce, there's a whole host of initiatives. Now, to marketing outreach, public education, and awareness, we've already launched a Cyber Maryland brand. And that brand has a website that's been built specifically for it, cybermaryland.org. It has an e-newsletter now called Cyber Pulse, and we've set up a bunch of social media outlets for it as well. And the second phase of this is really going into advertising this in key markets and going to trade shows and taking this on the road. We're going to unveil this whole brand look at the first Maryland Cyber Challenge, the MDC3, which we're hosting with SAIC, UMBC, Tech Council of Maryland, and the National Cybersecurity Alliance. Look, there's a lot of work that we're going to need to do in order to seize this opportunity. But some of the things and some of the facts don't change. We are better positioned than any state in the country to do this. If we stay focused, if we invest in the right things, not only in this field are we going to continue to lead the way, we're going to be leaps and bounds ahead of anyone else. Our biggest challenge will probably be not necessarily how well we protect this country, because I have every faith that all of you are going to do that. But it's going to be how well do we take those technologies that we commercialize in that effort and really allow it to be used in other industries and to have those industries located here, supporting banking, supporting healthcare, supporting all other industries, which, if you aggregate them, they're significantly larger and the economic opportunity and the jobs are larger. And so thank you for everything that you do. And we look forward as a state to partnering with all you, are a critical part of this ecosystem to move this plan forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Christian. Really appreciate you coming. All right, we're now open to questions to our panel. If you can meet me halfway, I've got a mic, and you can ask him directly. You can either designate one of the panelists or just have a question, and we'll see who can answer what. And I'm certain they're not going to be shy. I have one to start. Well, go ahead, and then I'll add mine a little later. Go ahead. Give your name.
Yeah, my name is Daniel Thomas with St. John Properties, and thank you for your time. Been great conversation about the workforce and the need for workforce. I know several of us here in the audience and several people on the panel. You know, our mission is to provide facilities for the agencies and the contractors and the universities who to help you complete your mission. As facility providers, what can we do, or what should we know to better help you? You know, buildings they're evolving. They're no longer just sticks and bricks. The IT infrastructure for a building is very complex. Location's very important. What can we do as facility providers to help you fulfill your mission?
Who wants to tackle that? Mark?
Well, it's really, in terms of the facilities and the construction for NSA, that's a Corps of Engineers really handles that. The requirements and things go to the Corps, but the Corps really acts as the agent for, I think, most federal agencies in terms of whether it's lease space or building new construction. We provide the requirements and they fulfill them. So I really can't give you any insight or guidance other than get to know your local Corps office.
Yeah. So yesterday I was down at the ASIS 2011 conference in Orlando. Talking about mobile security, but the ASIS conference is all about physical security solutions, gates, guards, infrastructure, and the predominant theme there was this threat of cyber, forcing them to provide converged security solutions for their tenants and for their neighbors. And so building modern facilities and offering modern facilities where you have identity and access control that's integrated so that your badge and your login can be correlated for a better defensive posture, offering solutions that are not only more effective and efficient in terms of green energy and what have you, but also more defensible in cyberspace as you're automating those facilities and making those industrial process control systems and SCADA devices more widely available will certainly be helpful, I think, to the community.
Bob, from a local, or go ahead, Jim, from a local county perspective.
One thing we haven't talked about is IT infrastructure. We are not in a good place in Maryland in IT infrastructure backbone. Broadband is not readily available, at least in Harford County in a lot of places. We're running out of bandwidth in other places, and I think when we look at the amount of data that we're going to be passing across, this becomes even more critical as you tighten that pipeline. We have spots. It's a little bit spotty. Some places it's great, some places it's not. When we look at our competition in the world, Korea, China, places like that, we need to have a backbone that's robust and that we can really do the job that we're asking to do. And as technology continues to put more bytes out in the atmosphere, we don't have the pipe to handle that right at the moment. And the second phase is we need to get this budget straightened out. There's no question that defense contractors are waiting and in a wait and hold period to see where their contracts are, what's happening, what they're doing. And if you're going to create jobs, you got a couple thousand of them sitting right in Maryland that could use a contract, and we'd be off to the races. So we'd like to see that happen.
How about I take maybe a slightly different take on that? Representing a big company, I'd like to think we kind of have it figured out. We've got 2 buildings over at NBP. We have a building up in the Nursery Road area. But the real problem, and I think maybe at the bottom line of where you're going, because I know Ed and I know you guys' business model is you guys are in the commercial real estate business for the most part, right? So I would say let's think a little differently about the problem and maybe try to do something a little more creative instead of the standard business model. Why don't you guys maybe try to take a cue from where we're going in cloud with infrastructure as a service, software as a service, applications as a service. Maybe, I'm just saying maybe, it might be worth talking to some people at Mark's team. We could do something maybe like a PISA program for infrastructure, for real estate, where the small companies they can't afford a SCIF space, right? So again, maybe if we could build out a space, kind of like, not exactly an incubator, but a place that was more like a beehive concept where we built a space where they could have standard office space. It's not SCIF, but maybe they have 10 compartments that they could have different access to that could be kind of pre-spec'd and then approved as the programs come online. I would just encourage you to maybe look at this a little differently so that we could scale more rapidly for the smaller companies. Because the Mantex of the world, I think we all have it. We have that space. Booz has like 500,000 square feet of SCIF space. Lockheed has 500,000 square feet of SCIF space. I'm not worried about those guys. I'm worried about the Oculuses of the world, the Looking Glasses of the world, the Cybertini type companies over at UMBC. If St. John could come up with a new model that could attack that, I think that would be a fantastic market for the space that we're talking about here today.
Bob?
A quick comment. I mean, this is a real practical approach to issues that we deal with day in and day out. I mean, any of the real estate developers know that there's always a process. There's always an approval process that has to go through. But knowing that contracts have a higher priority in this space, in the cyberspace, and the companies that deal with that, it becomes very, very important that you get the direct coordination between the developer, their engineers, the client's needs, specifically in this world of SCIF space and ATFP space, understand what the specific requirements might be, and then bring that into us, into the public side. We sit down with the teams, whether it's planning or inspections and permits, get a firm understanding of what is in front of us coming in terms of plans, get the critique early in the process so that we can speed our way through that permit process. I've been in this business 30 years, and there's never been a time that anybody said, boy, the permit process is really terrific. The fact is that it can be very efficient if, in fact, all parties to the deal, all parties to the transaction get here early. I mean, there's prospects out there that need to get in space so they can begin to work on these contracts. And the only way we're going to be able to satisfy that time demand is to make certain that all parties are looking at the issues early on. And we've got great professional people in the house that will bend over backwards to make sure that it happens, as long as we have the right information on a timely basis.
Thank you. Next question. I have one. If there is zero unemployment in this industry, how in the world do we move that across to help diminish the vast unemployment we have across the country and across other industries?
Well, part of the problem with that is, and all the big companies here do this, we go across country and recruit, right? It's easier with the younger people because the reload package isn't so much, right? They graduate from Georgia Tech, or, I'm sure Bill's company recruits, we target certain universities, but we go to others, right? That's the easy one. The senior ones, though, if you want to recruit someone from, let's say, Texas, that's a $30,000 reload package to move that person. 10 of them is $300,000. That's not a scalable model, right? So that becomes a real challenge. So for us, it's recruiting at the university level, right? That's the real model there, is going out across to, the Caltechs of the world, Stanford, and all the ones that tend to graduate those type of people. But
well, that's not so bad, at least recruiting from someplace, from Maryland.
yeah, we do that too, of course. I mean, local is even better, right? Because they're bought into the community, they tend to stay here. But because we just can't graduate enough people, because it is that level, you have to go nationwide and recruit nationwide, and that's what we do. And then also you see people, I mean, I'm sure, you could talk to it, Mark, but the NSA has also moved, honestly, they've moved jobs down to Texas and other places for various reasons. Some of it power infrastructure, some of it talent, but how many people are down at what used to be called Medina now? Several thousand are down in Texas now for a lot of reasons, but.
Bill, what about you guys?
Yeah, Ted, to follow up on Chris's comment, a lot of times what we find when we're looking for people is that it's really, the biggest barrier to hiring is really a training issue. So many times when we're recruiting, we find people with the right kind of skills but without clearances, or people with clearances but the wrong kind of skills, particularly in the cybersecurity area and particularly supporting Mark's organization. Even people with bachelor's degrees and master's degrees in electrical engineering and computer science aren't necessarily equipped to enter the cybersecurity field. So we, and I'm sure other companies, have put together our own training companies, which are our own training programs, rather, which are certified by Mark's organization as producing people who then can go to work on some of our programs. So it's not as bad. You know, I think across the country, we probably have a skills mismatch with the unemployment situation. Here, it's not so bad, but we still have a little bit of a skills differential with people we hire right out of school and the ability to go to work for NSA, for example.
We do, and to kind of add to that, part of the message is we've got to broaden the aperture a little bit too. There's a lot of great discussion today and ongoing about Maryland being the epicenter for cyber, and it is, and we're drawing a lot of talent and resources, but the aperture seems to be principally focused on local government jobs. And what's interesting about that is if you kind of flip it on its side and say, why do people go to Silicon Valley? Not to service the local government, right? They go to Silicon Valley to service the world, right? And so part of this question of where do we get the talent and where do we focus them on is first and foremost, obviously, national security. But if we broaden the aperture a bit beyond that, I think you can envision a state where Cyber Maryland as the epicenter is not only the safest place to commute, working on some of the most critical missions that enable national security, but also as a platform for innovation and opportunity where we have companies here servicing the world. Instead of filling just 5,000 jobs at the NSA, right, now you're servicing 100 or 200 or 50, 500 million people around the planet. We're growing the next Facebook or the next Twitter right here in our own backyard.
You're suggesting we need some of those Silicon Valley garages? Is that it?
As part of it, but again, just widening the aperture, I think part of the skills mismatch is that the most important roles have very, very stringent requirements, and I wouldn't argue against that in any way. But there's lots of other opportunity in this space where we can get people trained up, get them productively working, growing the economy, servicing the world from a cybersecurity standpoint, and then perhaps migrate them into some of these very special, very important positions, right? Rather than just leaving them unfilled.
Carrie, what about the community college?
Kind of a similar thing. 2 points is I do think we need to look at things differently. I think the four-year universities are very good at producing computer scientists, but there's a large number of jobs that are these hands-on technicians that we need to fill these positions, the people that are actually going to be doing this stuff to protect us. And I think that's the advantage that the community college offers, is that we do have people that have bachelor's degrees, PhDs, that are coming back that are retooling. So they have a degree, they have the aptitude to do it, they just need not necessarily another computer science degree. Certainly they could go down that path and then 4 years later they may be prepared. Or they could just take a couple classes somewhere and they can retool and get these skills and get back into the workforce.
And let me kind of also draw a kind of a real estate response to this. Because of things that are taking place at Fort Meade, obviously there's a great concentration of talent that's already here and needs to be drawn in to this immediate area. From a master plan perspective, you look at the geography around Fort Meade, we have no less than 13 major real estate projects that are underway, trying to provide a work solution, a workplace solution, and a residential solution, kind of in a mixed-use environment close into the fort. As I mentioned earlier, when you look at workforce, at mathematicians and computer science folks, we got 250,000 folks within a 90-minute drive time. We're increasingly finding that 90 minutes is way too long to get in your car in the morning to get to a place of work. So from a planning perspective, we're trying to draw that in much, much closer to the fort. It's part of the real estate response from Corporate Office Properties Trust. Howey Development is to put the product close into the workplace need, both the offices for contractors as well as residences for those folks that need to be here.
Maybe can I
Jim, go ahead.
Maybe one last one on this one. It's kind of an interesting scenario.
Okay.
I do a lot of blood stuff. People who know me know I get blood taken every week, right, for certain things. Anyways, I'm there, and the phlebotomist is taking my blood, right? And it's a 45-year-old woman who does this, and it doesn't pay a lot, but it's a job. She's a single mother, and we're kind of talking. I noticed that she has a book she's studying to get her sysadmin certification. It was like a, CCNA or one of those kind of things, and I started talking to her about it. Here's this woman who's late 40s, single mom, working all day, and putting her, taking care of her family, but she knows that her next generation career is something totally different. She's doing this at night and studying to retrain herself to move to a different part of the workforce. That's the important stuff that I think you're talking about down there.
Jim, go ahead.
Yeah, just to make a quick point on this. we do have a negative unemployment in this field, in this area, but it's only because we're the first ones who realize that we've got the problem. What's going to happen as this issue expands to business, healthcare, and state governments across the country, they're going to develop a negative unemployment situation as well as they invest more in cyber infrastructure. And that's why, as some of the speakers earlier said, we're investing in that now so we can be leaders as everyone else realizes they've got the same problems.
Go ahead, Bill.
And just one last comment. Certifications, I think, in the future are going to be just as important as degrees.
I had a question over here. Tom?
Great. Thanks, Dick. Tom Sadowski from the Economic Alliance. All great points, obviously. And if we're ever going to close the gap on Silicon Valley or Silicon Hills in Austin, Texas, it means encouraging more private sector investment from the venture community. And Rick, I'd go to you for this. Where do you see opportunities, in your business in the cyber realm, and what could we be doing better to be more attractive to you, your colleagues out there, to get more private equity into the game? Because I think that's a real game changer for us. That's a real area of opportunity. The more we can encourage entrepreneurship and activity beyond the government realm and balance this out a little bit. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think,
Excellent question, Tom.
I think somebody mentioned earlier, this is a bigger game than just about taking care of the three-letter agencies and the cybersecurity. We're fortunate enough to see a lot of technologies in other applications, whether it's social media. Rick Garrett's over here tried to hijack my tweet page a few weeks ago at the cyber team function. But more seriously, the healthcare space, identity and HIPAA compliance and the changes there, it just morphs over to a litany of different industries. And I think that's where the game changer can be very interesting from that perspective, from an economic growth opportunity. So I think that encompasses a lot of things. It takes people, it takes ideas. Those ideas require money. Back to your point, there is a dearth of financing in that early stage area in the region. I think back to Christian's point with the Invest Maryland, I think that's a nice step in the right direction, but it's a small step, and we've got to find ways to create those dollars to fund those ideas, which creates an epicenter for bringing talent to the area, because you can have great ideas. If you don't have the money, you're hard pressed to make that happen. And there are a bunch of great companies in here that have done that to their just because of their skill set and their tenacity from that standpoint. So I think it's space, it's money. I think we're doing a lot of great things in the region that I'm aware of in the tech transfer area. There's, I don't know how many, 24 incubators in the state of Maryland now. There probably weren't 15 years ago. I know Eris is doing some great things over with Hopkins, trying to develop some ability to tech transfer out on the medical side. So this is a very unique opportunity that we have, and I think it kind of feeds off of each other. Talent for the federal government, entrepreneurs, they spin out technology. We worked with a company this past year. Kid was 29 years old, had worked at NSA, came out, started his own company. But by the time we got the deal done, he just turned 30 and sold his company for $30 million. So, just those kind of things. And that, those folks, if they hang around, they've got money, they can invest, they're typically not done. They want to go out and start other opportunities. I think you saw a little of this phenomenon in Northern Virginia back in the 90s with America Online and those types of things. They create a lot of successful people with money, and they could go out and do things. So I think funding is critical, and that's setting up some opportunities to create venture funds, getting them to think outside the box. We've got a lot of venture in the area, not enough, but some that are starting to think outside the box and look at some of these early stage companies. But we're going out to Palo Alto in a few weeks. You get down Sand Hill Road and you can literally stand in the parking lot and go see 25 different VCs without ever having to get back in the car. So that's part of the solution somehow, is creating that infrastructure.
Go ahead, Jim.
And this leads me to another issue. We need to look a bit at our history, and between Tom and Jim Fielder, where was the computer born? Aberdeen Proving Ground, the ENIAC. The first computer to ever run was the ENIAC at Aberdeen Proving Ground in 1947, developed by University of Pennsylvania scientists, and then set up at IPG at the Army Research Lab to run firing computations for artillery and also nuclear weaponry. So we go back, why didn't Maryland become Silicon Valley? And I think it comes back to the fact that the research and the capital went someplace else, MIT and particularly Stanford, that saw the industry, saw the opportunity, had the capital, had the research, had the university support, and that's why we were passed over. It also didn't hurt that outside of every program was tomatoes and cornfields, but you know, you still had a lot of emphasis down here. And so my plea to the state is, let's not repeat our history. Here we have the same opportunity presented to us as we had in 1947. What do we need to do to create that entrepreneurism? Because certainly the cyber revolution was not done by the government, it was all private sector. What environment was available in the 60s and the 70s to create that environment to build that structure? And we need to make sure that we recreate that. Entrepreneurship, you know, I want to say, maybe I'm tainted here, but when you think of entrepreneurship, you really don't think of the state of Maryland as a center of hotbed of entrepreneurship. We need to change that perception.
Anybody else want to respond to that? It's a good question, Tom. Any other questions before I'd like to introduce Aris Melissarotis. Aris has agreed to kind of sum up for us. Aris is vice president over at Hopkins. All of us know him. He's been a substantial figure in our state. And I have to tell you, as a Democrat, he's one of the Republicans I really love. So our former Secretary of Business and Economic Development will kind of wrap things up. And if the panel will just stay, they may think of another question or so while Aris is trying to summarize this vast enterprise we undertook today. And by the way, I want to thank all of you for your patience. It's been a long program, and you've all been right here with us. It's terrific. Good. Go ahead, Aris. You're on, Aris.
Well, thank you, Ted. Is this mic on?
That's it.
Okay. First, let me congratulate Corridor Inc. for having the vision to bring these kinds of conferences together here. This is your second one. The first one was on the impact of social media on business, and that was equally important. You know, you're anticipating where the leading edge is, and you're bringing people together to take it a little further, a little quicker. Let me correct the misconception. I've always been a Democrat, working for a Republican governor. And I did switch in the end of June of this past year, because I was one of two candidates to be lieutenant governor under Ehrlich, and thank God that I didn't get picked. But anyway, because I don't like to lose. This fantastic panel and what we've heard from Dutch and Christian is very, very encouraging. Jim talked about when ENIAC was designed up in Aberdeen, and there were three of my Westinghouse colleagues that were involved in putting that thing together. Harry Smith, George Shapiro, and John Gregory were kind of the digital experts behind that. They went on to have great careers at Westinghouse, what is now Northrop. So we got a great history in this region. BRAC certainly helped to put a stamp on the kind of workforce that we have here and the kind of quality that we've had in all of our military and federal installations. Very, very key. And we talked a lot about education, and no small role in Aberdeen being as successful as it was in getting the BRAC win was the vision of some of the citizens in that county, Hartford County, to create the Aberdeen Science and Technology High School. That indicated to the U.S. Army that we knew what it was all about. And one of the promises of Fort Meade was to put an international baccalaureate program in the Fort Meade High School here in Anne Arundel area. So education always plays a very, very important role, and our reputation in education plays an important role. In education, I worry because we've been the #1 school system in the country for the last 3 years. And I worry not because it's something to celebrate, obviously, but I'm familiar with the quality of education across the spectrum of the state. And we've got some very excellent pockets. We also have some poor pockets. And if we are the best education system in the country, folks, that's a lot to worry about the country. We need to take the emphasis on education and multiply it by orders of magnitude. What we've done so far is barely scratching the surface on regaining our strengths in STEP And doubling the number of STEP qualified teachers is a very, very small step. We need orders of magnitude, 10 times, maybe to 100 times improvement in the emphasis in this area. And we can't just address STEP, we got to address the whole spectrum. Because this economic growth and these kinds of major futuristic government expansions and locations in our area here are very, very key. They attract the best of the nations and the world's contractors, and the high end of that workforce, of which we're proud that we're right up there, 27%, 28% of our workforce is engineers, is great. We will go find them. These companies recruit nationwide or worldwide. So we'll recruit the high end. It's the lower end. We need to improve the yield of the education system so more of our citizens are prepared to be productive workers in all these futuristic industries. And that's been talked about, and at every level of the education system we need to do a lot more. That is extremely, extremely important. You know, we need to do a great job recruiting Nancy Grasmick's successor, because who we pick and how we go forward from here will assure that we will stay number one. We must do that. And we must run away. We must not, it must not be close. We need to make those kind of giant strides. Cybersecurity obviously is important. It evolved from, I guess, when we were in office, Chris, it used to be called information assurance at NSA. And Dutch and the then county executive, Janet Owens, and I had dinner about every 6 weeks at General Hayden's house before General Hayden became the nation's top intelligence czar. And all these things were planned and discussed back then. And the emphasis, and the Howard County executive, Jim Roby, was also involved in our planning process. And we got to know General Hayden very well, and we got to know General Alexander very well. And General Alexander's having charge of both the NSA and the U.S. Cyber Command is very, very key. And yes, in the 80s or the 90s, Northern Virginia had kind of established a leadership in the digital world with the success of AOL, but AOL, as I used to say, is no longer what it used to be. And Maryland with DISA and cybersecurity has got it all over Northern Virginia in the strength in the digital world. So in this digital economy, digital lives that we live, it's not just the military or the government cybersecurity you got to worry about. You heard Chris talk about their healthcare initiatives at Raytheon. Every facet of our lives is controlled by digital things. Everything. And any disruption at the individual level or the system level tends to create an uncertainty, a ripple effect throughout the whole economy. And the economy rides on certainty. It doesn't like surprises. Sure, in the old world, that was only 10 years ago, surprises come in the form of airplanes running into our buildings. In the future, and now, they come into cyber attacks. And we need to be as vigilant about detecting, anticipating, and preventing the cyber attacks as we were of airplanes and terrorists with handheld shoulder-launched weapons. So that's a very key point. It may become that in another decade or two, the symbols of power projection, which at one time used to be military, like the 600-ship Navy, or the AWACS flying over the continent and being able to pick up every flying object over North America, used to be power projection. Power projection in the future may be our ability to deter cyber attacks, to just become so strong in this cybersecurity arena that our antagonists give up, as they did, as the Russians did in the Reagan era when they decided, hey, we can't keep up with this military buildup. So being the center of cybersecurity for the planet is extremely important. I applaud my successor, Christian, and Governor O'Malley for recognizing this and for doing the right things to put it at the forefront. And in a difficult budget period of passing things like Invest Maryland. Because yes, we need to staff the government jobs that are out there. We need to staff the startup companies, and we need to have more startup companies. And I don't know, Tom, where that parking lot on Sand Hill Valley or whatever it's going to be here in Maryland. It could well be around Fort Meade. It could be at Aberdeen. It could be at Arundel Preserve, because Jim, you mentioned cornfields out in Harford County 50 years ago. Well, only about 15 years ago, what is now Arundel Mills and Arundel Preserve was cornfields and tomato fields. And you see the development that's happened here. You see the quality of development that's occurred in this western portion of Anne Arundel County. It's happening all over our state. It's happening in Aberdeen, the Gateway Complex, the Water's Edge Complex, all of the commercial buildup that is going on around each of these military installations is very, very key. And that brings along the rest of the commercial world. And the ripple effect of the 16,000 or so BRAC jobs that have already relocated, and we've talked about another 40 to 50,000 contractor jobs coming with them. And just think of the tens of thousands of service jobs that will come. You know, the bakeries. I kind of took a wrong turn and drove through a Safeway shopping center here with about 50 other little businesses that weren't there before. And they're here because there's 4,000 DISA people coming to the area, among others, and it spurs economic development everywhere. And the quality of development that is going on, I used to be envious of Northern Virginia. I used to drive around Fairfax County and those places, and I used to see their big office towers and gleaming apartment developments and the nice landscaping. And Maryland wasn't like that, except for the 270 corridor. Well, now it's like that almost across Maryland. And what you see here at Arundel Preserve and Arundel Mills is really great. I mean, one of the third largest casino in the world opening up in another year. And that, by the way, is digitally controlled, and we need to prevent, kind of watch out the cybersecurity of that effort. So everything is cyber controlled, and the opportunity in the commercial cyberspace is going to be far, far greater, as all these folks have said. Now, the entrepreneurialism, the startup companies. When I was in DBED, I used to press the president of Hopkins and his senior team about doing more economic development, starting more companies, impacting the region more than they did. Of course, they employ 47,000 people. I think that's more than NSA. You know, the university and the hospital have a huge impact in Maryland. And we do $1.7 billion worth a year in research across the spectrum. A lot of it medical, but nothing that we talked about here today is not being done at the Applied Physics Lab in Howard County. We can't talk about it because, unlike NSA, we're not a public service. We're a trusted government agent, and we got to keep it quiet. But we apply science at the very highest levels that mankind has ever dreamed of. And in medical, our reputation as the #1 hospital in the world and the #2 or 3 medical school speaks for itself. Now, relative to entrepreneurialism, we didn't do very well because in the decade before I got there, we spun out on the average 4 companies per year, and the maximum was 6 in 1 year. In the 4.5 years that I've been there, we averaged 13 new companies a year, with this year doing 19. And they're very, very early stage. And I've been talking to Christian, and he understands this need. Invest Maryland is great. It'll come up with more traditional early stage VC money. But because of the nature of the Hopkins research and the University of Maryland research in every campus, we are very, very early stage companies. And we need seed funds that are pre-angel and pre-VC. We need to get those companies kicked off and running. And I think we'll find a way to create some opportunities like that. To stress the need for entrepreneurialism, Tom Sadowski and I are involved in an effort to bring Montgomery County and the Baltimore region together in creating Innovation Intermediary, a super tech transfer organization that will go across the university systems, public and private, and the federal agencies, and attempt to bring technologies together to create stronger companies. And the Greater Baltimore Committee, along those lines, has applied for an EDA grant, which will amount to about $10 million for the next 3 years, along with Hopkins and University of Maryland in Baltimore, to also create another innovation intermediary, a translational research fund, if you will. So the need for translational research is huge. That's what's going to accelerate our excellence in basic research to more creative entrepreneurial companies. So efforts like you all are involved in, whether it's commercial real estate, where the quality is enhanced so dramatically, and we're anticipating the needs of the customer is the primary thing you need to do. And gee, such a great idea, Chris, of a kind of flex cyberspace is really, really a nice opportunity to think about. A flex SCIF would give smaller companies an opportunity to advance their technologies and become operating companies quicker. So, you know, we're fortunate here. We got visionary government at every level. We have a Capitol Hill delegation that is so nicely positioned on all the right committees. You know, I remember Dutch when he was a rookie congressman, and he loved the idea he was assigned to the Select Committee on Intelligence. He always emphasized the select part, and he always gave you one of these. But you know that he's a senior guy and could become the chairman of that committee to go along with Steny Hoyer and Barbara Mikulski and all of our great Capitol Hill delegation and John Sarbanes. All of our Congress people are doing very, very well. And the teamwork that I experienced working with them in winning the BRAC battle was only the beginning. I think they're continuing on. So if I go back to Christian's statements, this state is as well positioned as any other state. In fact, we're far better positioned than any other state across the spectrum of technologies, be it IT and cybersecurity or any aspect of IT, be it the life sciences. And when we talk BRAC, we talk about Aberdeen and Fort Meade. Let's not forget Walter Reed and the huge expansion, the $1.5 billion building that's going on the Bethesda Naval Hospital campus, and the expansion that's going on at Fort Detrick, and the inclusion of Chemical Warfare Command up at Aberdeen and Edgewood. This state has it all, from the most sophisticated military to the most sophisticated life science research, whether it's a civilian side at NIH and FDA or the military side at Detrick and Aberdeen. We are superbly positioned to lead not only cybersecurity, but everything technical. We need to be the technology hotbed of the world. And if entrepreneurialism catches up and we displace Silicon Valley, that would be phenomenal. But I cannot think of any region of the world that is better positioned with the strength of the workforce, the understanding and teamwork between all levels of government, our close proximity to the world's capital in Washington, and that is what is going to maintain the U.S. leadership. Our strength of the workforce, and our diversity of the workforce. We need to go back to the Founding Fathers, whose number one dictum, number one pillar for success was education, education, education. And the second one, by the way, was immigration, bringing the best and brightest, as was discussed earlier, from around the world to join this great workforce. And yeah, now that the world is catching up, we're trying to catch up, we need to act a little differently, but still the best and brightest will come here. And we need to make sure that through our education system, we give every citizen an opportunity to participate in this new information and knowledge economy. We're greatly positioned for that. Somewhere along the way of those 7 pillars that the Founding Fathers talked about was innovation and incentivizing innovation. And if you glanced at Tom Friedman's brand new book, I think he talks about education, imagination, and innovation. And it's the kind of things that we need to push to make sure that we regain our lead and that we keep ahead of the rest of the world. And starting with cybersecurity on the government side and the military side, and progressing to the commercial side. So all the new emphasis that is being placed on healthcare informatics. The more we digitize the healthcare world and the more hospitals are willing to give up their data and become interconnected, the more we're going to be in a position to kind of be bombarded with cybersecurity kind of issues. So we need to protect all that, not only for HIPAA purposes, but for continuity of the economy purposes and continuity of life purposes. So respect cybersecurity, be thankful that we're located in a region that leads the world in this effort. talk your neighbors and kids and your friends' kids to go study STEM kind of things. Don't forget the fact that you need a well-rounded education, so let's educate them in English and communications and the like, so they can talk to the smart engineers and cybersecurity experts. But move the education process continually forward and respect the work that your colleagues are doing that are working for government. I'd like to really congratulate the panel for giving us such a broad cross-section of these issues involved with cybersecurity. And I'd like to thank you all for participating and for being a contributor to Maryland's continued success. Thank you, and have a great day and a cybersecure day.
Thank you very much, Harris. I think, Greg, you may have some announcements while you're here for some drawings. And if there's any questions of the panel, I'm sure will want to respond. It's been a long day. We did finish, we are finishing close to the time that I said we would. It's almost 11:30, isn't it? It was getting there. Right. Go ahead, Greg.
Pretty close, Ted. Thank you all once again for coming. Just wanted to say again, thank you so much to our sponsors, Hartford County Economic Development, Morgan State University and SAIC, as well as Anne Arundel Community College, COPT, Economic Alliance of Greater Baltimore, and of course our platinum sponsor, Mantech. Quick couple of announcements before we draw our door prizes. The Maryland Cyber Challenge and Conference will be, the event will be going on at the Baltimore Convention Center October 21st and 22nd. There are over 50 high school, college, and pro teams competing for scholarships and prizes. Founding partners include UMBC, the Tech Council of Maryland, SAIC, and NSA. SAIC's booth is where you can find out more about that competition. And there are still exhibit and sponsorship opportunities. So go visit their table or www.mdc3.org. Also, remember to please fill out your press box questionnaire to win a meet and greet with Ray Lewis.